Foreign Office today told British citizens in the East African country of Eritrea to leave as soon as possible, following renewed fighting with its neighbour Ethiopia. Warplanes from both countries carried out cross-border bombing raids today, killing dozens of people and injuring hundreds more. Our Africa correspondent Tim Ewart reports.
They were seen once as the best of neighbours, but no more. These rockets were fired today from Eritrea across the border into Ethiopia, another ominous sign that the two countries could be on the verge of all-out war. Eritrean troops are being mobilized, and there have been bombing raids by both sides. Eritrea won independence from Ethiopia 5 years ago, and there's been a long-running dispute over a 150-square-mile triangle of territory. It was a peaceful disagreement until now. The Eritreans say they were attacked first.
They came they passed the border and attack our armies. After that, we take counter-attack.
Whatever the truth, and dozens of people have been killed in one town in Ethiopia, the attacks have caused alarm abroad. Both Britain and the United States have ordered their nationals to leave Eritrea. The toll on the ground, meanwhile, continues to rise. Scores of people have been left homeless and large numbers injured. Despite appeals for talks, Africa's latest confrontation may be close to an ominous escalation. Tim Ewart, News at 10.
Ethiopia and Eritrea have been airlifted to safety by RAF and US aircraft. Within the past few hours, they've arrived in the Middle East before flying back to Britain later today. The airlift was possible because of a temporary ceasefire between the two warring countries. It ended at 5 o'clock this morning. Avovi Todd has been following developments.
Ethiopians wounded in the fierce Eritrean gunfire. This morning they're expected to retaliate after last night's brief respite. Hundreds of foreign nationals, many of them employed by aid charities, seized on Ethiopia's decision to allow a 13-hour let-up in the fighting to fly to safety. The RAF Hercules aircraft landed in the Eritrean capital Asmara before midnight. The city's airport has been the target for bombing raids by Ethiopian MiG fighters since the war erupted on Friday. It airlifted 44 Britons and 60 other nationals scrambling for a safe haven to Jeddah. The remaining 21 Britons, including several children, were taken out by the US Air Force to Oman. The Foreign Office says the evacuees will return to Britain as soon as commercial flights can be found for them. Among them is Britain's Honorary Consul Stephen Burgess, who took up his new post in Eritrea just last week. Ethiopia and Eritrea, already scarred by years of conflict, are among the poorest nations in Africa, but both are equipped with large arsenals of Soviet weaponry. They enjoyed friendly relations until last month's clash over the joint border. 155 miles of barren land now massed with infantry and armour. Avovi Todd, GMTV News.
And for more on that story, on the line from Jeddah is the British Consul General, Inif Ray. Good morning.
Good morning.
How were the Britons when they arrived in Saudi Arabia this morning?
Well, they were fairly tired and weary. They'd obviously been through a fairly harrowing time, but we were able to get them through immigration and to a hotel by about 6:30 this morning, where they're now resting. And in about an hour or so, we will start trying to get some flights back to the UK.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. We seem to have some problems with the phone line there. Hopefully we'll be coming back to him a bit later. The Saudi police officer accused of forcing murder confession.
Ethiopian planes bombed Asmara for a second time, hitting the international and military airports.
Throughout the window given for the evacuation, planes shuttled in and out of Asmara. First was a German plane. It remained on the tarmac only long enough to take on its quota of 210 people, Germans and other Europeans. The United States sent in 2 aircraft. These were followed by a British Hercules which took out Britons, Canadians, Australians and South Africans. For embassy officials, the operation was a logistical nightmare, with every seat on the plane taken. For those leaving, after 2 frustrating days of waiting, the relief was great. On Saturday, Ethiopian jets again bombed the military airport on the edge of Eritrea, but Ethiopia says it has so far only targeted military sites. The Ethiopian government accuses Eritrea of targeting civilians in its bombing raid on the Ethiopian town of Mekele on Friday. In that raid, more than 40 people were killed. Each side continues to blame the other for starting the bombing.
The border dispute has escalated quicker than anyone thought, and now that the safe window for the evacuation is closed, there is concern that the bombing will resume. And the people are only now taking on board the consequences of what is fast becoming a full war. Kathy Jenkins, BBC News, Asmara.
Dispute with Eritrea turning into full-scale war. America says it's prepared to send a representative to help resolve the dispute that's forced hundreds of foreigners to leave the area. 40 Britons and 60 other foreign nationals were airlifted to safety early this morning.
Throughout the night, the airlift had continued, bringing out from Eritrea those fleeing the fighting. Here, an American Air Force plane arriving in Jordan, among its passengers 21 from Britain. A suspension of bombing raids by the Ethiopians had allowed nearly 2,000 foreigners to leave in what had to be a scramble. The British families on that flight finally arrived back at Heathrow Airport this evening. It had been a long journey, and they had no comments for waiting journalists on the situation they'd left behind. In Ethiopia, as the conflict had escalated, the town of Mekelle was hit twice in a series of tit-for-tat bombings. Dozens were killed and over 100 injured, with accusations by the Ethiopians that civilians were being deliberately targeted. Though there's been a brief suspension of the attacks, there are fears they're likely to restart, with feelings turning to bitterness.
I don't think it will stop, because we have to take a revenge.
The conflict is over 150 square miles of disputed border territory. There the fighting has continued, with the Ethiopians claiming they've retaken a disputed border town. The Eritrean capital, Asmara, is still quiet, in the lull after 2 days of bomb attacks on the airport. International efforts are continuing in an attempt to stop the fighting being renewed. Valerie Jones, BBC News.
Pakistan is blaming India for a